Today I want to have a broad conversation around when's the next possibility for us to see a Nintendo Direct presentation, and might it not be the September Direct that I've already been calling into question in recent videos if you've been around on the channel here, just because if you looked at the June Direct and how Nintendo kind of padded out the release schedule for the rest of the year, and even some of the games into early next year in 2025, such as Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, I am in the mindset somewhat that Nintendo may not hold their traditional September Nintendo Direct this year, especially with us knowing that we are around the corner from some kind of brand new hardware announcement from them. And as we talk about approaching the month of August and looking at history, one interesting thing that has happened over the last couple years is a game-specific Direct. And wouldn't you know it, the big September game this year is indeed Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, and the idea of this video is going to be tackling whether or not there is a likelihood for something like a dedicated Zelda Nintendo Direct focused on Echoes of Wisdom to take place as soon as middle or late August, and that may indeed be the next Direct presentation, with some speculation towards the end of the video on just how likely that September Direct is to take place. So we'll get on the same page with all of that. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first kick it off by looking at the Nintendo Direct history, because that really is what we are largely basing this theory around. So over on the Nintendo Direct Archive website, we will first start off highlighting that June 18th, 2024 is indeed when we learned about Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, and we know it to have a late September release, the 26th to be exact. The last game-specific Direct we have had from Nintendo was focused around Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and that was held on August 31st, 2023, and we didn't learn about that game until the June 21st, 2023 Nintendo Direct. The difference being, however, of course, we know that Super Mario Bros. Wonder was the October game for Nintendo. It was out on the 20th to be exact, and that does create a little bit longer of a gap from a potential Direct focused presentation around the game to release, but everything's on the table here, and I don't necessarily think that a slightly different gap would really call into question the likelihood of a Zelda Direct taking place or not to mention the fact that if Nintendo chose to hold this Direct presentation focused around Echoes of Wisdom earlier in the month of August rather than at the tail end, we could be in a situation where we actually see a very similar time gap from the Direct presentation to the game's ultimate release. You then continue on down, and kind of disregarding the Super Mario Bros. Movie Direct announcements, we did have a Splatoon 3 Direct in August as well in 2022. Now, this game was released on September 9th of that year, and we did see Nintendo essentially hold the Direct focus presentation just about exactly 1 month before that game's release, and once again, we have a game-specific Direct in the month of August. So just the last 2 years are prime examples in terms of when Nintendo has held a game-specific Direct in August, and if you go back further than that, you do see some more game-specific Directs, but not tied to the month of August whatsoever, and it gets a little bit harder to pin down any kind of pattern like you like to ideally do with Nintendo, and to see if they are kind of sticking to a loose timeline of holding the same type of presentation. So as we go further back into their history, it gets less and less reliable, but I would like to point out that 2022 and 2023 time slot of there being an August game-specific Direct for a fall game that we know this time around will be Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. Now, there is also the idea that Nintendo could potentially hold a game-specific Direct for Mario and Luigi Brothership as opposed to Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, but if I was going to pick one out of the two, I actually do think that Nintendo will choose to spend time on their top-down 2D Zelda project as opposed to Mario and Luigi Brothership for a dedicated presentation. We have until November to expect that game to be on retail shelves, and there's nothing saying that they can't hold a game-specific Direct for it as well. But if I'm personally placing my bets on what Direct is more likely, and it being tied to maybe that August timeframe like we've seen them do the last couple years, I like the chances for Echoes of Wisdom as opposed to Brothership. And then the question becomes what Nintendo might focus on at this Direct presentation, because you know that we have seen kind of the basis of the game so far. We definitely got a more in-depth explanation than we sometimes do for an initial reveal trailer for something like a Zelda game, because this one does have that unique gameplay idea where you are playing as Princess Zelda herself with the Tri-Rod as your primary item as opposed to Link with his sword. Now, you might remember we did get some ESRB leaks around Link being playable in this game, and nobody largely knows if that's just something that takes place in the opening opening sequence of the game, or if there is a point where you will switch between Princess Zelda and Link. And this is the exact kind of gameplay idea that if it is somewhere featured within the game, Nintendo might want to market that to gamers that are a little bit more on the leery side to playing an entire 2D top-down Zelda game as Zelda herself. Believe it or not, that's pretty regular feedback I see online in comment sections and things. I personally am excited for the change up of pace and the new type of gameplay elements that playing as Princess Zelda will entail. And I also think it's going to be really unique to have maybe more of a puzzle-based approach to this game as opposed to it being a lot of hack and slash combat. And of course, you do hope that Princess Zelda will get a number of notable items like Rock's Feather, the hook shot, boomerang, amongst many others. But because of the Tri-Rod, it does definitely potentially put her into more of a box of utilizing her environment around her and that kind of replacing the traditional items that you find within a top-down 2D Zelda. So there might be that idea that it would be nice to kind of please both sides of players and give us some Link gameplay as well. And if that is a big mechanic in the game and we're potentially switching off between sections when we meet back up with Link in the Shadow World later, or maybe we don't meet up with Link but we play sections of the game in the Shadow Realm as Link, like if one of those mechanics is involved, it might be a good idea for Nintendo to deep dive that and market it a little bit. And I definitely think we could easily get 15 to 25 minutes of content from Nintendo directly outlining all of the game's features more in depth than they have so far with the initial overview trailer. And looking at a game like Zelda Link's Awakening, which of course was a fan classic remade with this same type of engine and visual style, that game has performed close to the 7 million plus units sold mark. It may be over that now, but as far as the last official number I found online, looks like it's 6.46 million copies worldwide. That's still a significant number for a top-down 2D Zelda game in the modern day, and of course that came out in 2019. So considering that this is going to be a brand new adventure within that world and style, I think Nintendo knows they have potentially their biggest seller of the year in Echoes of Wisdom, and that in my opinion leads all the more credence to the idea that we may indeed see a game-specific direct take place in the month of August for this title. Now I want to lastly briefly tackle the idea of what if there's no Zelda Direct in August, and is there a likelihood for a traditional September Nintendo Direct to take place? And the reality is that whether or not we see a Zelda Direct take place in the month of August, I don't believe that that will directly impact Nintendo's plans around a fall Direct at all. I think we are in a very interesting year for Nintendo, and I am personally setting my expectations on the lower side of seeing their traditional September Direct presentation, just because there were some key giveaways at that last June presentation. We got a lot of their 2024 lineup completely outlined, and even a game like Donkey Kong Country Returns HD that clearly could have been saved for something like a September Direct if they were planning to have one. That is Nintendo's January 2025 game that we already have an official release date for, and there was also a lot of third-party focused announcements that were coming out in October, November, and even December of 2024. So really a lot of announcements at that presentation made me feel like Nintendo's kind of filling the holes so they don't have to have another mainline presentation in the fall in September. And I also think that there's a high likelihood that in that late September, early October timeframe, we might see that first look, first reveal trailer for Switch 2 or a marketing ramp up to ultimately take place in January or February of next year, like a full out blowout presentation where we learn about the games and more in-depth look at the hardware for what's coming. So with that said, Nintendo doesn't have to stick to their more traditional path of directs this year, and that can even be said for them skipping their February direct in 2024 and just having a partner showcase to kick off the year. We are definitely in a different year than the regular cadence of the Nintendo Switch's life cycle that we've seen over the years. So I personally am setting my expectations lower on a September direct. I like the idea of a Zelda Echoes of Wisdom focused direct in August, but that is obviously not confirmed and just a theory that I think is somewhat likely, and I've seen it briefly discussed online, so I do like the idea of it. But that's where I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video. What do you think is the likelihood that we get a game specific direct in the month of August like we've seen the last 2 years? And do you think it's focused around The Legend of Zelda and Echoes of Wisdom specifically, or do you think it's more likely that Nintendo may promote something like Mario and Luigi Brothership in a game specific direct? Or are you on team no game specific direct in 2024, and rather we may see that fall direct Direct take place in September. So let me know all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.